Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yay. Good morning, Brittany. How's it going? Good morning. Good morning, Richard. Lena, Ahmed, Miriam. Jasmine, good morning. Carrie, good morning. Wow, everyone's awake today. Everyone's excited this morning. That's good. Yay. Ming, good morning. Shivanji, good morning. Wow. Beatrice, good morning. Taser, good morning. Yay. And I think I got everyone. Miriam, yes. All right, guys. So let me share this here. Share this. Today we're going to do that. Today's going to be a kind of a lighter day than I think the last few classes have been in terms of content, because today we're basically going to look at trees that we would have. So, all right, if we were in real life, well, we are in real life, but if we were in person today in class, what we would have done is I would have made you get all bundled up. I don't know, it snowed here last night in Michigan. I don't know what it's like back in Jersey, but would have made you get all bundled up, and we would have gone out onto campus and explored the campus trees that are kind of near the classroom. And the reason I would have done that is because we're going to look, well, and the reason we're going to keep doing this in this virtual format is because it's a good way to kind of put together some of the things that we've already come in contact with in this class in terms of terms. So it's one thing to like see a word, but it's another thing to maybe like think about it in context of a actual plant. So that's kind of what we're going to do today. Yeah, so it's going to be a lighter day, but still good to keep some of these in mind. If there's something in particular that I definitely want you to pay attention to, I'll make sure to make a note of that for you guys. Okay. Yep. So pretend we're like walking around the campus together. Oh, I have it more in the chat box. Okay, would you recommend taking notes, or is this practice? You can take some notes. So basically so on the second lecture exam, I will include maybe descriptions or even pictures of some of these species and tell you things about them, like this species has purple leaves and blah, 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 blah. And you would have to pick from multiple choice, like a common name. So as we go forward today, you don't have to memorize the scientific names, but you should be aware of the common name of some of these. I'll make it known. You don't need to know all of these, but you might want to jot down a few notes. But the slides will be available on Blackboard, and I will post the recording of the lecture as always. Yeah, and and today, right, April 1st, today around 11 o'clock or so, the study guide for the second exam will be available on Blackboard as well. So you have the study guide for over a week, because our next exam is like 9 days away or something like that. And it will tell you on the study guide which of these trees I want you to know like the common name for and be able to like identify. Okay, so in today's virtual tour, we're going to go through trees, and the trees are in the groups Angiosperms and Gymnosperms. So we haven't talked about Angiosperms in detail yet, but that's okay. It's okay, because the terms that we come across today are going to be terms we already have talked about. But we did finish the Gymnosperms last time, right? We finished with the conifers. Before that, we did ginkgo, and before that, we did the cycads. So we are officially done with the Gymnosperms. Most of the plants we look at today will be Gymnosperms. There'll be a few of them, though, that are Angiosperms. Right, let me close this chat box. And of the plants that we look at today that are in the Gymnosperms, I think all of them are in conifers. So if they're in conifers, what's something that we could expect to see on the trees that we're going to look at today. If we're going to look at gymnosperms today that are conifers, what's one structure that they most likely have? Yay. Yes, cones, right? Conifers bear cones, right? That's from the Latin cone, conus and ferere, right? Conifer. Good, okay. And then angiosperms we'll look at as well, a few. This is just a reminder of what those words even mean, gymnosperm and angiosperm, right? The gymnosperms have exposed ovules and later, I don't know if you guys can hear barking. My parents are visiting and their dog's barking right now, okay? So sorry if you hear barking. I figured it'd be kind of interesting to hear barking, right? Better than hearing nothing. Yeah, so gymnosperms come from those Greek roots, right? Naked sperm or naked seed, and they have exposed ovules and then later exposed seeds, right? So like seeds and ovules that you can see with the naked eye. Whereas angiosperms have their ovules and later seeds in a container, and that container is the flower initially, and then the fruit, right? The fruit. Okay. So first, some gymnosperms. I think all the things we look at today in the gymnosperms are not only conifers, but, oh, right, yes, conifers in that Phylum Pinophyta. Oh, wait, Coniferophyta. I have to look into why it's phylum. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Just know we're in the gymnosperms and we're looking at conifers. Just know that. Just know that. Cone-bearing trees. All right, so here's one. So if you have ever been to campus, and if you've ever been to Boyden Hall, and you would exit Boyden Hall from the back to go across that like big open space, a kind of like quad area leads you to all the other places. There's a big planting bed right there, and in the middle of that planting bed is this really big tree, and that tree is this Atlas cedar. So what do we want to know about Atlas cedar? So what I did to kind of organize this is like I have a slide that has pictures for each of these, and then I have a slide that has some information about, because what I would have done in real life is handed you out like a piece of paper that had information about all these plants. So this way it's kind of like a 1-2. I don't need you to know all the information that's on that little paragraph, but just so you know, when you have the slides, you'll have it. You'll have all the information on the slides. So Atlas cedar, let's see. All right, so here's a couple things that I care about for the Atlas cedar. They are monoecious, right? So they have sex organs both on one plant, right? They have long and short shoots, and their needles, so that look, they have needle-like leaves that are in bunches called a fascicle. The other thing is that they're kind of bluish greenish, like the leaves are kind of bluish greenish. And these trees are commonly planted as like a landscape tree. And so a lot of times the ones that are more blue are kind of more desired than the greener ones and more expensive than the greener ones. They're conifer, so they have cones. They also have leaves that stay on year round, right? Evergreen leaves. Yep, and that's basically all the things that I care about for them. But let's just go back to the slide to look at them here. So just so you know, so on the top left, that's a big giant version of this Atlas cedar. And this one's more on the green side. But if you look at the close up of the leaves on the bottom left, it's kind of a bluish color. It's a more bluish version. So Tosin is asking, Professor, can you underline what you want us to know on the slides? Yeah, I just did. Did I? Do you mean again, Tosin? You want me to redo that one more time?
Sorry, Prof. I'm just saying, can you like maybe leave it on the slide, like when you upload the slides on Blackboard? Like,
No, so, but what you could do, because I'm gonna post the, I'm gonna post this recording. So what you could do is you could just fast forward to the parts where I do that. But no, sorry, because the slide's already gonna be uploaded on Blackboard. They're already uploaded.
okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so yeah, so greenish kind of colored one on the top left, more bluish version on the bottom left. And then so I said that the trees are monoecious, right? So they'll have male and female sex organs on the same trees. Here is the, let me change color because it's kind of hard to see. So here is the male sex organ. Here's the structure that's bearing the male sex organs. And since we're in the conifers and since we're in the gymnosperms, what must that structure be called? So this is a structure that is bearing the male sex organs. What must that structure be called if we're in the gymnosperms? Strobulus, yes, thank you, Brittany. Yes, strobulus, right? Cycads have strobulus, ginkgo have strobulus, and the conifers have strobulus holding the male sex organs, correct. And so since it's a monoecious tree, these male sex organs or these strobili will be on the same tree with the cones. So these are some cones here on the bottom that will hold the ovules, right? The cones will have the ovules and later the seeds. And then the other term that came up was this word fascicle, which I could write in the chat box so that you guys have it, or actually it's on here. I don't need to because it's on the next slide here. Fascicle, right here, right? Fascicle. And fascicle is just a word that means a cluster of needles, a cluster of needles. So I'll show you what that is here. So for example, here, see on the bottom left, oh, and I said it had long shoots and short shoots, right? Here's the long shoot. Here's a short shoot. Here's a short shoot. And just like in ginkgo, the leaves emerge from the short shoots, just like we saw in ginkgo. And these leaves are in a cluster, and we call that cluster a fascicle. In some species of trees, you can identify the tree by the number of needles in the fascicle. However, in Atlas cedar, there's so many needles in a fascicle, we don't even as botanists, we don't try to count them. We're just like, how many are in there? We're like, a lot are in the fascicle. We don't even try to count them. All right, so that's enough about Atlas cedar. So next we have junipers, right? Or Juniperus is the common name. Juniperus is the genus name, and there's a bunch of different species in the junipers. Let's see, where are these on campus? If you're walking towards Smith Hall and toward the parking lot around there, there's this weirdly shaped tree that the people who take care of the plants on campus have totally like shaved in a weird way. But that is a juniper. That is a juniper. Let's see, without even going to the next slide, I can tell by this slide what are some things I want you to know. So for example, one thing is it's definitely evergreen. This is an example. So the plant we just looked at, right, Atlas cedar, had needle-like leaves. And in the conifer lecture last time, we learned about other shapes that conifers have, right? We learned so needle-like leaves, but we also learned scale-like leaves and awl-like leaves. Remember that leather working tool awl? Yeah, good, Catherine, good. Yep. Catherine wrote in the chat box, scale. Yes, so scale-like leaves, awl-like leaves, and then we also learned about the more laminar shaped conifer leaves. But what's cool about juniper is juniper has two types of leaf shapes. So on the here you can see this leaves on this branch have a scale-like leaf, and then the leaves on this branch have the awl-like leaves, right? Those like really pokies. Another thing juniper has, and this kind of made people a little like, what? I'm a little confused last time, is they have these weird fleshy cones. So you see here, these bluish looking things, those are the cones. And so this is one of the species that has like weird fleshy cones, kind of look like a fruit, but they're not botanically a fruit. And this is one of the species that we talked about that is bird dispersed, right? Look at this little guy. He eats the cones, and then when he poops them out, new junipers show up in other places. Let's see if there's anything else. Evergreen. So I said all the things. But evergreen, all like leaves and scale like leaves. Also monoecious. For the record, most of the species that we look at today are monoecious. And then they have these fleshy cones. So that is, oh, another cool thing about juniper is if you've ever had gin before, that drink, gin, we actually make gin from juniper. So if you're ever next to a juniper and you smell it, it smells really like evergreen, like kind of like a piney type smell. And if you've ever smelled or drank gin, it has that same kind of smell to it, and that's because it comes from this tree. Okay. Next, oh, this one I think is one of my favorite ones from these groups. So this one, if you're on campus, there's a huge one right by the law school, right, or right when you turn from, if you're walking from Boyden and you cross where the crossing guard is like, come on, come across right there, toward the law school, there's a huge one of these right there. This is the dawn redwood, or if you want to be fancy, you could say Metasequoia glyptostroboides. Yes, it is that fun to say, right? So Metasequoia glyptostroboides, really fun to say, but dawn redwood is fine. You guys only need to know dawn redwood. Let's see. This is a really interesting tree because, so this tree, botanists thought that this tree was extinct for the longest time. We had fossils of it and we knew of it, but we didn't think it was alive on Earth anymore for a really, really long time. We knew that it was a gymnosperm. We knew that from the fact, and we knew it was a conifer. Based on the fossil record, we knew it was a conifer because it had cones, right? Here's a mature cone that's all brown on the left. Here is a developing cone that's still green. And from the fossil record, we knew it had strobili, which is right here on the right. But people couldn't find it. And so the reason why it was thought extinct for such a long time is people said, well, it's a gymnosperm, it's a conifer, so it's probably evergreen. And so people would go scouting for it in the winter time because all the other trees would have lost their leaves, and they thought, oh, it'll be a lot easier to spot in this dense forest. However, what we eventually found out is even though this is a gymnosperm and even though it is a conifer, this species is actually deciduous. So that's what the pictures are showing you on the top. This is a rare example of a conifer that loses its leaves every year. So you can see here, this is the plant in spring and summer. This is the plant in autumn. And this is what the plant looks like in winter, which is why it was not found for a very long time because it just got overlooked. The other cool thing, this is a really, really old tree, not as old as like ginkgo, but super old. And it has this really cool, almost like prehistoric looking bark. These can get really, really tall. They have super cute cones. The cones are probably about like ½ an inch big. And people think that they are so cute that they actually make jewelry out of them because they're super cute. So Metasequoia glyptostroboides, or the dawn redwood. Let's see if there's anything else I forgot. Right, thought to be extinct. Later discovered. deciduous, and monoecious. Question in the chat box. Is the bark primitive? What do you mean by that, Hira? Can you elaborate on that question? Oh, I said it's prehistoric. I guess I more meant, so it's, no, I mean, like, it's the bark and the tissues inside of the trunk are not different than the bark and the tissues of the other gymnosperms we've looked at, like especially ginkgo and the conifers, because this tree has abundant secondary growth. So no, it's not primitive. I guess what I more meant is, if you see where it says, hold on, I want to see if it doesn't say anything about, oh, see, like, it just has this, it's just the look to it. Like, if you were standing next to it in person, this tree has a look to it that's kind of got a Jurassic Park vibe. Like, it's big, the bark is kind of reddish, sometimes it's peeling a little bit, and it just like looks prehistoric, but anatomically speaking, it's not different in any way than the others we've talked about. Good to ask that, though, in case for like clarification. All right, let's move on. Okay, Pinus rigida. Pinus rigida is another one. This is one that if you're in Jersey, you can find it a lot of places. So it's also conifer, it's also evergreen. It also has fascicles or clusters of needles. The leaves are needle-like in appearance. Look, here's a fascicle. It has 3 needles in it. What else? Bark is really like, kind of when it's mature, real like big, flaky appearance. And the only other thing for this class that you should know is monoecious. Like I said, so far everything we've looked at is monoecious, right? For this lecture. So keep that in mind. Everything so far has been monoecious. Okay, so this is another pine. This is the white pine, or Pinus strobus. And if you're new to like looking at plants, you might say to yourself, like, well, this plant and this plant, Rebecca, do not look different. These are the same plant. You might say that, right? And it's true. I mean, they're both pines. They have a very similar appearance. Yes, pitch pine is evergreen. Yep. So far today, everything we've seen is monoecious. Everything we've seen is a conifer. Everything we've seen is evergreen except the dawn redwood. So that's a good way to kind of organize things, right? And we saw the Atlas cedar and the pitch pine and the white pine all have needle-like leaves. Dawn redwood has kind of more laminar leaves, and the juniper has those scale-like and all-like leaves. Just trying to show you how to kind of like compartmentalize things, right? And like organize things in your brain. Okay, let me close this chat box. Yeah, so if you saw this and you saw the next one, you might say, like, Rebecca, these look very similar to me. I can't really tell them apart. Sure, like, I understand that. But one way, and this is why it's useful to know things like fascicles and things like that, is that, so here's the fascicle of white pine, and white pine's fascicles always have 5 needles. And in our region, like in the New Jersey, New York kind of metropolitan area, and the whole eastern seaboard, really, there's really no other pine tree that has 5 needles per fascicle. So if you have 5, you know you're dealing with a white pine. Another thing is, if you were to touch these, like touch the needles, So like pitch pine, the needles are super rigid. Look at the name, right? Pinus rigida. Pinus rigida. So the needles are super rigid. But on the white pine, the needles are actually kind of soft. So if you were to rub your hand on them, it's just kind of soft and thin. Monoecious as well, right? But plants have both male and female sex organs on them. Here's a cluster of strobili. And here's what the cones look like. Another way to tell you're looking at a white pine is a lot of times the bark and also the pine cones have kind of a white resin on them. So it makes it a little easier to identify. Oh, another, so historic fact is, do you see how tall these trees get? Really, really big. Really, really, really big. And they have trunks that tend to grow very, very straight. And so when the British first came to this continent, and you know, we're kind of gathering things from the land, one thing that they wanted to use a lot of, and actually would mark these trees to prevent anybody from messing with them, was the white pine. And what they would do is they would use the trunks for masts on their ships because the trunks are so tall and straight. So these sometimes were referred to as the king's trees. Yep, so here's the things I was saying. White resin, that it makes it look. Tallest conifer in New Jersey. Wow. Evergreen, monoecious, fascicles with 5 needles, right? Okay. Another conifer and another, but this one is a fir. So this one has a fun name to say as well. It's Pseudotsuga menziesii, okay? Again, you don't have to know the scientific names. Douglas fir is fine. But Pseudotsuga is kind of fun to say. Douglas fir, let's see, monoecious, evergreen, needle-like leaves. These needle-like leaves are not arranged in fascicles. They are borne singly, which is a thing we came across in the lycopod lab, right? Or the lycopod lecture. Borne singly, so like here's a needle, etc. Here's a needle. Not arranged in a fascicle. Oh, and yeah, let's see if I talk about it on the next slide. I think I do. All right, yeah, see, cone with conspicuous bracts. So I didn't really spend a ton of time on it last class, but maybe I should just for a second here. Let me use, I guess, red. Okay, so remember when we learned about the cone last class, and toward the end, we saw a bunch of cross sections through cones. And I made a big deal about how like a cone is not a strobilus, right? Because like a strobilus, here, I'll do it on the left. Here's a strobilus stem, leaves, right? And on the leaves, it depends on which side of the leaves you are talking about, depending on the species, or sorry, the phylum, but there's sporangia, right? So, strobilus, stem, leaves, sporangia. That's a strobilus. Cone, oh, sorry about that. Cone is different because cone is a modified branch, right? Modified branch. So you have a stem, and then you have these littler stems. Oh, I should use a different. Here, actually, let me do this. All right, clear drawings. All right, I'm going to use red for stems, and I'm going to use orange for leaves. So here, strobilus, stem, and leaves, right? Sorry, little leaves on this one. This is strobulus on the left. And on those leaves of the strobulus, right, sporangia. So here you go. So stem, leaf, sporangia, that's strobulus. Now let's do a cone. Here's a stem. And then there's littler stems on this stem, which are called scales of a cone. And under each scale, in evolution, in the geological past, under each, well, no, scratch that. Under each scale is a leaf. Here's a leaf, here's a leaf, here's a leaf. And then on each scale, we'll use a different color, are ovules, right? Oh, that didn't work, that's too light. These blue things are ovules on the scales. So this is why, the reason I'm showing you this is because this is why strobulus and a cone are different. Strobulus is a stem with leaves and sporangia on the leaves. A cone is a stem with smaller stems coming off of it, which we now call scales. And underneath each scale are leaves. And on top of each scale is an ovule. In most species of conifer, the leaf has kind of been lost over evolutionary time because it doesn't really serve much of a purpose. The goal of a cone is not to do photosynthesis anymore, right? So the reason I bring this up is because Douglas fir is one of the only species that you'll ever encounter that you could really see the leaves well. Another word for leaf in this case is bract. So, and bract is what we call leaves when leaves show up and they really kind of don't have a purpose anymore, or it's something that doesn't quite look like a leaf, but it technically is a leaf. Don't worry about it. The point is, let's go back. Sorry, kind of got away on this. On the Douglas fir, they have the leaves still very visible as part of the cone. So, and this information will be useful to you too when you do the lab. So here is one cone, and on that cone are the stems, right? So there's a stem in the middle that you cannot see. There's the smaller branches, which are those scales, which is hard to see on this. Sorry, maybe I'll post a picture later. And then each of these tongue-looking things coming out are those leaves. So it's cool because why I like it is in the fossil record, we could tell that in the older prehistoric, now extinct cones, that a lot of them had like decent sized leaves underneath these scales, but most of them have been lost over evolutionary time. And in the Douglas fir, it's not. You could actually see it with your real eyes and see that it did happen. Okay. This is another one that came up in the class last time when I was talking about fleshy cones. So this is yew or taxus. And I always say it's like, it's not you, it's you. It's you. So yew is evergreen. Yew has these kind of more laminar like leaves. So they're needle-like, but they're flat. Also borne singly, not arranged in a strobulus. Yew is commonly planted as a hedge. You can see here in the middle picture is a very manicured hedge of yew. But if you were to let it just grow wild, they can become pretty decent sized trees. And of all the plants we've looked at today so far, this one is dioecious, whereas everyone else we've looked at so far has been monoecious. So yew is dioecious, male and female trees. Female trees bear, oh, I should change colors. Female trees bear these fleshy cones, which are bird dispersed, right? This is one that the birds eat and then poop the seed out, and then another yew will show up. Male trees have strobili, like always in the Gymnosperms. The strobili kind of look a little bit like little flowers. This is one strobilus. This is 4 strobili. Anything else I want you to know about you? No, nope. Although I will point out, so this little, in the case of you, not you, but you, in the case of you, the fleshy cone is called an aril. Fleshy cone is called an aril. And I will show you that word here. Oh, not Ariel, not like Little Mermaid, aril. Yeah, that's what that fleshy cone is called. All right, moving on. All right, so that's all the gymnosperms that we're going to talk about today. So not too many. You can, again, a nice way to organize them is like only one of them was dioecious, right? The last one we looked at. 2 of them had fleshy cones. All of them were evergreen except for the dawn redwood. You can do things like that to kind of compartmentalize. All right. Some had fascicles, some didn't have fascicles. Leaf shape. All right. So angiosperms. We haven't talked about angiosperms too much in this class. We will, starting next class, go jump into the angiosperms. But the angiosperms are the flowering plants. Majority of the plants on Earth are flowering plants. I guess I have to say that a bunch of times because I can't believe how, yeah, people for some reason can't understand this, but the majority of plants on Earth are flowering plants. Flowering plants are the majority of plants on Earth, right? 93% of all plants on Earth are flowering plants. So angiosperms make flowers and then later fruits. So if anything has a fruit on it, it originally had a flower at some point. Then you will also sometimes see the phylum name Magnoliophyta. I think maybe even the lab material might say, oh no, wait, that is, sorry, I haven't gotten to that yet. Magnoliophyta is the phylum name we're going with. Magnoliophyta. There's another one that shows up in lab and stuff, but we don't need to worry about it. But for our purposes, we're going to go with Magnoliophyta as the phylum. All right, so here is the first one. This is Acer plantanoides, or the Norway maple. You can see a map here on the bottom of where it occurs as an introduced species, right? It's originally from Europe, but now occurs regularly in the US and Canada. Nice shape, but a bit invasive. This plant can really take over areas. Has really big leaves, really big. So I know there's like areas in the Bronx, or probably areas in Jersey too, where like this tree is very, very, very common. And you could tell it by, it's usually a lot of times by the sides of roads, but also the leaves are like this big, you know, like really big, where like if you're in a car and you happen to look at it, you're even from the car like, whoa, those are some really big leaves. What else do I want you to, oh, well, most of the angiosperms we're going to look at today are deciduous. So whereas all of the conifers and the gymnosperms we looked at today are evergreen, most of the angiosperms that we're going to look at today are deciduous. So it is dioecious. Let's go back. Male and female trees. Let's move this box here because I can't see. Male and female trees. Here is male tree flower. Here is female tree flower. But we haven't learned about the flower anatomy yet, so you don't need to know details about those. But one way to identify this as a maple, see here, let me clear this. Do you see this genus name here, Acer? So every maple is in that same genus, Acer. And also every maple has the same type of seed. which is something we call a samara. A lot of times when I first say this to students and we're out on campus, if we pick some up, sometimes people call these like helicopters. So if you're a little kid growing up in New York and New Jersey, and maybe when you remember like picking up things off the ground and like throwing them up in the air, and they kind of like look like helicopters. Many students have told me they did this, so I'm not making it up. But anyways, those were the seeds of a maple, maybe a Norway maple, called samaras. Okay, right, and in case here, samara, yeah, it's the name of the fruit. Here's another Acer, right, or another maple. This is Japanese maple. This is all planted very commonly as an ornamental species. So where is it on campus? If you exit Boyden Hall from the back and you just enter that like quad area, if you leave that exit and take and look immediately to your right, there's a small red tree there, and that's this Japanese maple. Japanese maple leaves come in a lot of different, so there's a ton of different varieties. These have been cultivated to have a lot of different shapes, but like the leaf shapes of the Japanese maple are really cool. A lot of diversity in color and frilliness. Sometimes my students say that this looks like a marijuana leaf. So that might be one way. It's easier to identify. What else? Oh, all right, let me ask you a question. So look here. Would you say that this is a simple leaf or a compound leaf? Or even here? So you have to think to yourself, what's the difference between a simple leaf and a compound leaf, right? In the chat box. Palmately compound. Oh, wow. Ben, good job. Yeah, so look. Yes. So great job, Ben. Yeah, so this is an example of a palmately compound leaf, which we haven't come across yet in real. We've heard about it in term. And this is one of those compound leaves that looks like a hand, right? Like a hand. Thank you, Ben. Wow. Also, so much like the other maple we saw, it has samaras. But this tree is monoecious. Was the other one? No, yeah, that's what I was saying. Norway maple is dioecious, but Japanese maple is monoecious. Yeah, that's it, I think. Yes, and then the samara. Yes, samara is the name of the fruit. Sorry, is the name of the fruit. So here, let me go back. So this part here, I don't know if yellow is the best choice. This is a hard slide to pick a color for because there's just, in terms of color blindness, I guess I'll use black, I guess. All right, so look here on the bottom right. So each of these is a seed. This is one seed. This is one seed. This is one seed. This is one seed. But this whole structure here, oops, or this whole helicopter thing here, which is called a samara, that's the fruit. So samara is the fruit, but inside of the samara are the seeds. All right, the next one we're going to look at is the flowering dogwood, or Cornus florida. So if you were to walk out of the law school in that whole little area there's a bunch of these planted, all like it's almost, I don't know, 20 of them or something like that, right in front of the law school. Flowering dogwood. This is another example of the word bract. So if I were to ask you here, what does this look like, right? Like, this is not, It's not a trick question. Like, what does that look like, right? What is this thing here that I just circled? It's not meant to be tricky. Right, Ben. Ben knows too much. Right. So this does, right, it looks like a flower. This looks like a flower. And to be fair, part of this is a flower, but this is another example of that term we came across, bract. So in the case of a flowering dogwood, the part that's the flower is actually here. So these are the flowers here in the center. There's a bunch of flowers there. And these things surrounding the flowers are actually leaves, which we call bracts. I'll write it in the chat box, bracts. Remember I said earlier that like a bract is kind of what we call a leaf when it shows up, and it's like not what we're used to dealing with in terms of a leaf. Yeah. And here's another variety of flowering dogwood where here again, the flowers are in the center. And then there's these pink things that look like petals, but those are also leaves that we call bracts. And see what would have happened over evolutionary time is, so these plants are pollinated by insects. And what would have happened is, so like if you're an insect and you're flying around trying to find a flower, this right here doesn't look all that exciting, right? You may even overlook that. Oh, hold on, Vivian, I'll get there in 1 second. But if you're an insect flying over and you just see this little round green thing, you might overlook that. But if you had a few colorful leaves surrounding the flowers, insects might have noticed it more. And so over evolutionary time, those would have been the plants that were more successful. And that's why they have these showy leaves surrounding the flowers, because of natural selection in insects. So Vivian asked, what does it mean if a leaf is opposite? So that means we have ways, because we're botanists, we love describing things, right? And having to tell trees and plants apart. So on plants, leaves are arranged certain ways. And one way that leaves can be arranged is opposite. And that means that they're opposite to one another. So like directly across. So flowering dogwood is one of the leaf arrangement on the flowering dogwood is opposite. And what that means is, so here's a branch, right? And the leaves occur opposite one another, directly opposite one another. Other species have leaves arranged in different ways. For example, I'll write it in the chat box, alternate. When leaves are arranged in an alternate manner, they occur like one and then more stem and then boom. So like I'll draw it over here. Here's alternate. Oh, can you see that? I just drew a stick. Can you guys see that? Okay, I wasn't sure, since it's on the side, I wasn't sure if you guys could actually see that. So here's opposite arrangement. These little sticks coming off the sticker leaves. Here's alternate arrangement. And there's other types of leaf arrangement as well. For example, whorled, which we'll talk about arrangement more when we discuss the angiosperms in detail. What else? These have berries, an actual berry. So this is not an aril anymore. This is a real berry because we're in the angiosperm. So real flowers right here in the middle and real fruits down here on the right. Real fruits. So things for dogwood, the flowers are surrounded by showy leaves, which we call bracts. They have opposite leaf arrangement, they're deciduous, and they have berries as fruits. Yep. And that's it. And deciduous. Most, like I said, all the angiosperms that we look at for the most part are deciduous. All right, next we have the sweetgum. Got a question in the chat box. Are they monoecious too? The flowering dogwood, yes. Yes, monoecious. I guess I didn't write it there. Yeah, I didn't write it there. Yeah, it is. Okay, next. So here, now we're going to do the sweetgum. So this one is right next to Boyden Hall as well, on the backside of Boyden Hall. There's a few of them planted right there between Boyden and Conklin. And these get really, really big. Another fun one to say, if you like the scientific name, Liquidambar styraciflua, Liquidambar styraciflua. Hard to say, but fun. And let's see, what do so this look, you can see in the middle picture, you know it's a monoecious tree, right? Because you have male and female sex structures on the same tree. Really cool fall colors on this one, ranging from bright yellow to kind of a bright red. Easy to identify because of this perfectly star-shaped leaf. Which, how would we describe that leaf? How we came across before. Oh, so remember, yeah, palmately compound. Remember, so if it looks, it can be a little deceptive, right? But like if it looks like a hand, or in this case, a star, I say palmately compound. And the other thing too that is a good way to identify these are the fruits. So the fruits almost look like cones. They almost look like that. They're hard, they're brown. These almost look like mace, like a old medieval weapon, but they're actually called capsules. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, but more importantly, I just want you to know, it's like the ways to identify this for the purposes of this class, but in life too, star-shaped leaf and a capsule, right? Star-shaped leaf and a capsule that kind of looks like a cone. Monoecious, deciduous, yeah. All right, now we'll talk about some oaks. Let's see, we got 2 oaks. This one is white oak, very common in our area. These easy way to identify oak trees is you have these fruits, which even non-botanists are probably familiar with, right? Acorns. So all oaks have acorns, and all oaks are in the genus Quercus. So it's useful to know the genus names because it's like all maples are in the genus Acer, all oaks are in the genus Quercus, all pines are in the genus Pinus. So it helps sometimes to know that. Let's see, what do I want you to know about it? Monoecious. Yeah, I guess the only thing we want you guys to know is that it makes acorns. It is monoecious, it is deciduous. Acorns are an example of a nut, is in terms of a fruit type. Oaks are wind pollinated, so the male flowers hang down like this, and the pollen will get caught by the female flowers, so wind pollinated. The bark tends to be, wow, okay, let's bark tends to be kind of whitish on maturity, hence the white oak. And these plants can get really, really big. So you see here on the top left, look, this is a person. Oops, I have covered. Look, that's a person. To give you an idea of how big they can get. All right, next we have scarlet oak. Scarlet oak is cool because it turns bright red in the autumn. There's a bunch of these planted by the law school as well, across the street from Conklin. Because it's an oak, we know it has acorns, deciduous. And you might say to yourself, like, well, these two trees look very similar to me. One way to tell them apart, if you didn't have the acorns, is, so you see these leaves, this is one leaf showing you the top side of the leaf, this is showing you the bottom side of the leaf. Do you see how, like, it's kind of smooth? The edges are kind of smooth, like kind of rounded of the leaves. And so here on the scarlet oak, they are more like bristly. So like the edges of the leaves have these little bristles. I don't know if you can see here. It's like kind of pokey. That's another way to tell them apart in terms of the white oak and the scarlet oak. The other thing is the acorns on scarlet oak are super tiny, whereas on the white oak, they're much bigger, like that big. What type of leaf arrangement do the oaks have? Oaks have alternate, but it's very hard to see. So they have alternate leaf arrangement. It's kind of hard to see on these slides because these leaves are kind of growing closely together. It's not like newer growth. Let's see if it shows it better here. Yeah, no. You might be able to, oh, here on the close-up, you can tell here. So like here, you have one leaf going here and then one leaf going here. So they're not opposite one another, right? They're alternate. You could also see here, if you pull down, here's a step, whoops. Here's a stem, and like, you can barely see it, but like the leaves, there's one leaf there, there's one leaf there. So they're not opposite, they're alternate. Same with the scarlet oak. All oaks have alternate leaf arrangement. And what was I gonna say? Oh, most of the things in our region are alternate. The opposite leaf arrangement is much less common. So oaks are not palmately compound. Oaks are not palmately compound, they're simple. So here's how you can think of the difference between that. Let me just make it more clear. So like palmately compound, here's the petiole, and like here's the leaf, and like kind of looks like a hand. See, like all the parts of the leaf are kind of coming off of, and actually the veins would be like this. It's hard to, okay, that's not a great, that's a horrible drawing. Whereas oak leaf is like, here's a stem, and then here is the rest of the leaf. Oh my God, that's so bad. I can't draw. Oh my God, so bad. There we go. Whoa. Okay, so it doesn't look like a hand. That's really, I apologize. This is really bad. Another thing is sometimes the palmately compound ones have really deep lobes. So it's like they'll actually be like separate like that. There you go. Okay. Wow, I should not draw. All right, let's see. We got this. How many more do we have here? Oh, I think we got, yeah, we only have 3 more plants. Only 3 more plants. Okay, hang in there. Hang in there. All right, so this is American holly. This is another one that is planted a lot as a landscape plant, and people tend to manicure it. So like you can see here, it's been trimmed to be in a conical shape, but if you were to let it just do its thing, it would be much more like a tree kind of looking thing. This is the first angiosperm that we've looked at today that is actually evergreen. So American holly is evergreen, keeps its leaves year round. The fruit is a berry, which you can see here. Holly berry, like not holly berry, like holly berry. Oh my gosh. What else? Dioecious. and berries and evergreen. Yep. Next is our honey locust or Gleditsia triacanthos. Gleditsia triacanthos. Oh, here's a good question. Somebody other than Ben. Ben can't answer this. Don't answer Ben. What type of leaf is this? That's one leaf right there. One leaf right here. All right. What type of leaf is this? Yay. Oh, I should have said not Brittany either, because Brittany also knows. But yes, one time spinately compound. Yes. One time spinately compound is correct. One time spinately compound is correct. Great. So this is our honey locust. Let me close this. Okay, so Brittany's saying, I don't know the difference between simple and compound leaves, sadly. All right, so, but Brittany, you just told me that this is one time spinately compound, right? So you do know it more than you think. I think what's tripping you up is the palmately compound thing. And maybe I messed it. Did I lead you guys astray? Let me just see if I led you astray. This is 100% palmately compound for sure. Right. This is sweet. You know what? I might need to look. I might need to look into
The
this.
last slide, the sweet gum. Can I see that leaf?
Yeah.
That's
I think that this, honestly, Brittany, now that I'm looking at it again, I think this is a simple leaf. This is a simple leaf, isn't it? It must be. Here, let me look it up. It's gotta be, because there's no lobing or anything. Let me just look. I know, I could tell. And obviously this is the one. Okay, so Ben's saying, I think it's palmate venation, but a simple leaf. I think that's also right.
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a weird, and you know what? That's probably why I specifically did not even mention it in the description. Like here, you can see I didn't even mention if it's simple or compound in here, because I probably didn't want to confuse things, and by my not mentioning it, I confused things. So yeah, let's go back here. This you could agree though is palmately compound, right? You can see the different parts.
Yes.
All right, good. So this one, we're gonna say we've come to consensus that sweet gum has a simple leaf, right? Because if you're playing with the petiole, like I always say, playing with the petiole, there's one thing above it, and so we're saying sweet gum is a simple leaf. Yeah, with, I guess, palmate venation, which is right on then. Yeah, I think we're right with that. Sorry to confuse you. Oak, simple leaf. Oak, simple leaf. Holly, simple leaf. But this one, Brittany told me, is one time spinately compound, correct. So this is our honey locust. Honey locust is an angiosperm. It is deciduous, losing its leaves in the winter. In the fall, it gets this really beautiful golden color. And these trees are planted very commonly as street trees and in parking lots. And so a lot of times in the fall, they all turn yellow at the same time, and it's a very beautiful display. What else? This, if you have allergies, do not plant this on your property. It will, or if you have a car that you don't want to wash, don't park your car underneath this car in the spring. It releases a ton of pollen, a ton of yellow pollen that really makes a mess. Let me close this, sorry, too many things open. What else? It has a legume. That's the name of the fruit, which looks like, why can't I go back here? These are the fruits here. So almost, it looks like a pea pod, right? Like if you've ever had like green beans or snow peas, kind of looks like that shape. All right. And then last but not least is the purple leaf plum. Purple leaf plum is the easiest one to remember because it's the only one of all of these that has purple leaves, and the common name is purple leaf plum. So this is the easiest one to remember. This is another angiosperm. This is also deciduous. It has purple leaves. Let's see what else. Monoecious. And the fruit is called a drupe. All right, fruit is called a drupe. Purple leaves, not, Catherine's asking, purple leaves year round? Well, no, because this is another one that is deciduous, so it will lose its leaves in the autumn or fall. But will be showing up pretty soon. We'll have purple leaves showing up again pretty soon. All right, so those are the species that an actual plum tree, like people eat it, LOL. So it is an actual plum tree. And you know that because it has this, well, no, I shouldn't say that, but yeah, it is an actual plum tree. However, it has been cultivated to have this very beautiful purple leaf color. And so the fruits are very small and not super great. I'm sure there's some birds and probably squirrels do eat it. Catherine's asking, curious, does it, sorry, Vivian. Vivian's crying because she can't eat the plums. Catherine, you got me, Vivian. Catherine's asking, curious, does it still have chlorophyll? It does still have chlorophyll. It must still have chlorophyll because it still has to do photosynthesis. So there are still green pigments. It's just the other pigments are a little bit more pronounced, but it's still going to be able to do photosynthesis just fine. It does still have chlorophyll. Good question. Oh, Vivian got me. All right. Those are the plants that I would have, this is our virtual tour of trees around campus. Before we leave for the day, I just want to give you guys some resources here. So some of the things that I went through today are things that you would encounter if you were using a field guide or a botanical key. So maybe you've bought a book in the past, like to identify trees or wildflowers or something like that, even maybe birds. And so if you have, not birds in this case, because of like opposite and, deciduous and things like that. But yeah, so you can purchase books and find botanical keys for purchase or online to help you identify plants. And when you look at these types of books, this is so these books have inside of them botanical keys. And the botanical keys, basically, if you are at a tree and you're trying to figure out what kind of tree is this, and you have your book with a botanical key inside, you can go through different parts of the tree to narrow it down to get to your answer of what tree it is. So here's an example here. So if you were standing next to a, let's say you were standing, well, so just look here, you can see, like, let's say you were standing next to a juniper, right? A juniper, here. Let's say you were standing next to, I'll just show you the picture again. Way back here. All right, let's say you're walking around campus and you were standing next to this tree and you didn't know what it was and you're trying to figure out what it is, right? So you open your book with your botanical key inside and you start to ask questions about the plant. So for example, I'm just showing you how these work so that if you ever use these, So the first thing it asks you is, are the leaves broad? And in the case of the juniper, no, the leaves are not broad. So we move on. Or are the leaves needle-like or reduced to scales? Ah, they are. So we're going to stick in that category. Next, it says foliage produced as needles, either in fascicles or borne singly. No, they aren't on that in juniper. So we're gonna, that's not it. We're gonna skip that whole part. Needles borne singly, not in fascicles. They're not needles on juniper. So that is out. Foliage produced as scales on branchlets. Yes, they are on juniper. And then if you read these things, we did not learn this one today, the thuga, don't worry about it. But if you read here, look, branchlets rounded, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes with scales pointing outward, cones, look, cones, semi-fleshy, bluish, berries, right? We must be talking about a juniper. So that's how a botanical key works. If you're at a tree trying to identify it, ask you these questions, and if it's no, you move on to the next thing. So this is how we used to do it, kids. this is how we, and I still do it this way. In fact, some of my books for identifying trees are some of my favorite books that I have. But now we have technology, and there are other ways to do this. So, for example, there's this really great site called Go Botany, which is part of the Native Plant Trust. And you can kind of use this to work through a botanical key with technology. And there's the website, it is there for you at the bottom. So this is a very great tool for plants in New England area, right? So like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, that kind of area. But another thing you guys should check out is this app called iNaturalist. So this is a free app, and basically what you do after you download the app, and you can do it for Apple or Android, and you could even do it on a desktop if you take photos and then upload them later. But basically, if you see something, you take a photo of it, and then you can either tell iNaturalist what you saw, but iNaturalist also makes recommendations as to what you probably saw, and then you say yes or no, and then other people, scientists, but also community scientists and amateur botanists will tell you whether or not you got it right or not. And then you, as you become more knowledgeable, can look at other people's photos and say, oh, that's a purple leaf plum, that is not something else, right? And you can say, you know, they could be like, oh no, this is a dawn redwood. You could be like, no, this is a purple leaf plum. Very useful. You could do projects. Oh, Ben's like, I love iNaturalist. iNaturalist is great, and technology is really good now. For plants, it's super good. I would say for mushrooms, like not so, like be careful with mushrooms, right? Like don't eat a mushroom just because iNaturalist tells you that it's something. But for plants, the tech is really good. So and it's free. It's free. So I definitely recommend you guys checking that out. Another one is Leaf Snap. So this is useful if you have just part of a plant, right? Like maybe just a leaf or a flower or a fruit. It's also free. I think Leaf Snap is only available on Apple, but iNaturalist is free and available on all platforms. Leaf Snap also free. The link for that is there. Okay. It says next class TBD, but next class I think we're just going to jump into the Angiosperms, because I'm working on getting you guys a bunch of special guests to discuss different things later in the semester. So I want to make sure I have enough space and room. So I think next class we're just going to jump into the Angiosperms. Yeah, so it's not TBD. I think we're just going to do Angiosperms, because we have to cover them a few times. There's a bunch of information. What else? Study guide for the second lecture exam will be available today, probably in about another 15 minutes or so. So check that out. Oh, and I wanted to ask, since we were talking about apps just now, in the very beginning of the semester, I had posted just for fun a game where you like grow plants. Did anybody try it? Or is anybody like doing that game? It's okay if not, but I have been, and it's actually very fun and meditative. So yeah, okay, here the name is yeah. Oh, Beatrice, have you been playing it? Here, it's yeah, here. Verity is the name of the app. But if you go on Blackboard, I also mention it in the announcements. Andrew says I've been doing the real life version. Yeah. Well, that's good too. They're both good. And Ben's like, me too, Andrew. But just for fun, I was just wondering if anybody had pulled up the game to try. You don't have to or anything. I just was curious because I've been doing it. All right, guys. Well, yay. Oh, only Angiosperms left. I can't believe it. So if anyone has any questions, happy to answer them here or in a follow-up email. Have a good lab tomorrow. Hopefully you're getting your grades back from the lab exam. And yeah, have a great weekend. I'll talk to you guys. I'll see you next week. Bye. Thanks, guys.